It is Monday, the 22nd of November, 2021. It's 2211. It's an auspicious date in conspiracy history circles. The anniversary, of course, of the JFK assassination. What is that now? 58 years ago. And also the date on which the author and researcher Dave McGowan sadly passed away in 2015. That's been 6 years now. So 2211, of course, equates to 33. That's the reason that date was chosen for the JFK assassination, which was a ritual sacrifice. 2211 equates to 33, a number so beloved of the dark occult priest class that we have presiding over us, or had. We'll get on to that. There's nothing inherently evil about that number, of course, 33, or this date, or any other number, such as 666. These are available for any of us to tap into and utilise for our own means anytime we choose to. They are not the domain only of the dark occultists. So 33 and 666 can be beautiful numbers if they're utilised for the light, for God, for creation, for the people, for us, for truth. And that's what we've got to do more of. So I'm the opposite of Bob Geldof in so many ways, hopefully, in that I do like Mondays. I get a lot of shit done on Mondays. And I've taken to doing these videos on Mondays just because I'm so damn busy at weekends now. I'm doing events most weekends. This weekend just gone, I was away in Newcastle. Had a great time up there. I did 2 talks for Truth Seekers Northeast, one on Friday evening. Big shout to Maureen and Dawn, as ever, for the wonderful hospitality and the gifts and the poem from Dawn. Then on Saturday afternoon, I was at Walkerville Community Centre in Newcastle doing a public talk there. Great turnout, great discussion, and the most exciting thing for me was being able to present new content from my upcoming book, Musical Truth 3. It's the first time I'd presented these stories. I'd put 5 stories together as kind of vignettes in this composite presentation. And it was great to air that stuff for the first time because, you know, it gets a little wearing, it gets a little tiresome going over the same old information each and every time. My good friend John Hamer will bear that out because he gets asked to do talks on the Titanic and Jack the Ripper all the damn time. And from talking to John, I know his heart sinks just that little bit lower whenever anyone asks him to talk about the Titanic. It's a bit like that with me and Paul McCartney. Somebody says, "Hey Mark, what's your latest theory on Paul is dead?" And I draw a deep sigh and then I answer the question. But actually there's more on the McCartney situation in the upcoming book, incidentally. So yeah, great time at the weekend. It really is wonderful to network with like-minded people and just be in their energetic field and to kind of pool our consciousness in that way. It's an incredible experience. And of course, it's one of the things that the evildoers are most scared of and most want to ward off. They don't want us communing in this way. That's what the first lockdown was all about, in part, keeping people locked in their homes so that they couldn't get together and formulate any kind of kickback resistance, fight back plan to what was being done to them. So let's get on to that. The title of this video is The Beginning of the End. And I'm not talking about the beginning of the end for us, the people, for humanity. I'm talking about the opposite. I'm talking about the beginning of the end, finally, for these sick, psychopathic, freak, demon ghouls who have presided over organised society, humanity, for so very long. Whether it's hundreds of years, whether you want to take it further and say it's thousands of years, either way, it's a bloody long time. And it's about time that we, the people, the masses, 99% if that's what we are, it's about time that we reclaimed our own fate, our own destiny, our own reality. It's our time now. And I was very naive last year. As many viewers will know, I've been documenting this shit show since the very start. I did my infamous car rant in April of 2020, which is what put me on the map for a lot of people. They discovered my videos off the back of that. And then they were like, holy shit, this guy's been around for 10 years. He's been putting books out. Yeah, it's been a long and weary 10 years, let me tell you. Well, it's 11 years, actually. But I've been documenting this since the start, and I was naive enough at various points along the way through 2020 to think that we'd started to get this, that we were starting to turn the situation around, that the dynamic was about to change significantly. I was wrong on all of those occasions. There was probably a little bit of hopium, if I'm honest, because I wanted the situation to improve and I was trying to will it to improve, and we'll get onto that shortly as well. I've been less optimistic through most points in 2021 because all I've seen is the tyranny continuing to get ramped up several notches and us being edged ever closer to totalitarianism, which has been depicted in so many TV shows and movies. And a couple of good ones that people might be familiar with, or if they're not, they might want to seek them out, which portray aspects of where the sick ones want to take human society and have done for so long, would be, first of all, the movie Cloud Atlas, directed by the Wachowskis, who have clearly a lot of inside knowledge of what the master plan is. But their movies always seem to offer some kind of hope and some kind of optimism and draw on some kind of solution for humanity to get itself out of its predicament, interestingly enough. I still don't trust them, though. So the Wachowskis were behind Cloud Atlas, which I've mentioned before in previous videos and podcasts. It's a quite brilliant movie. It is a compendium of 6 different timelines. And what you have is the same characters appearing in many of these different storylines. It's the same actors playing different characters. The idea being that they've been reincarnated into new lives. And the new lives that they get, the circumstances and the situations that they go through are directly dependent on the choices that they made in their previous lives. So it's karma. It's consequentialism in action. And it's quite fascinating the way these storylines evolve. So you've got the first one set in sort of Victorian times, 1850 something or other, I think it is. Then the next one is set in, I think it's 1932. Then you've got one set in 1973. Then you've got one set in what was current times when the movie came out, 2012. And then you've got 2 futuristic ones. In the last futuristic one, there's been some kind of worldwide cataclysm which seems to have wiped out most of humanity. And they've had to start again from scratch. It's hinted that it was a nuclear disaster which caused this. But in the 5th timeline, one of the futuristic ones, you have a glimpse into the type of scenario that they've been trying to nudge us ever closer towards. And this is one where you've got a social credit system, you've got 5G technology controlling everything. It's artificial intelligence, there's surveillance and monitoring everywhere, and you've got hybrids, human, cyborg, robot hybrids, as aspects of artificial intelligence. And it's quite horrific the way this society is. Humans have no freedom, they're completely beholden to the state, to their controllers, and quite simply, if they don't do what the control system wants them to, there are consequences that are suffered. That's where they want to take us. That is the reality that we will be living in just a few years from now, if these sick demons get their way. But they won't. I make the point because it offers a horrific glimpse towards what lies in wait for us if we don't turn this situation around. Then the other popular culture vehicle I want to mention is an episode of Black Mirror. So I was sent a DVD box set of Black Mirror. Big shout out to Connor. I only watched 2 episodes, to be honest with you, because I found them just so friggin' depressing. The first one involved people having this technology implanted into their brains, whereby they could record their experiences and they could then choose to go backwards in what had been recorded, rather like going back on a DVD or a video, and kind of relive that experience and change it in some way. But just the whole way it was presented was just very traumatizing, very, discomforting. Then there was another episode that I watched, and this is the key one. Again, you've got this futuristic society where everything is governed by a social credit system. This is the one where there's an X Factor style talent contest. And the whole thing is done in a very dark and disturbing way. And you've just got people living or dying by what their social credit score is, by how obedient they've been to the dictates of the control system. And if you emerge as any kind of rebel and offer any kind of resistance to what's required of you, then your social credit score goes down and you're prevented from participating in society. You are punished. You might say you're locked down, to use that phrase. So that's where things would be headed if we didn't put it down. And as I've said so many times before, and so many other speakers have said this, it is down to us, collectively, the people. There is no saviour out there that's going to step in and do this for us. There's no Q plan. Trump's not going to save us. Even these legal cases that are going on, and there are many around the world, all of them have yet to bear fruit. All of them have yet to produce tangible, measurable, verifiable results. So we can't rely on these either. We ourselves have got to do this. That having been said, this weekend just gone has been quite incredible in terms of some of the spectacles that it's turned up. Massive demonstrations out on the streets, visibly for all to see, in Australia and most notably across Europe. And within that, most notably, Rotterdam in the Netherlands, which has made the mainstream news because they couldn't ignore it. There were so many people out. It was such a momentous event that if they had completely ignored the story the way they ordinarily like to, it would have been so obvious that they were deliberately ignoring it. And for any normies that haven't quite yet twigged that the mainstream media is there to lie to you and feed you propaganda and brainwash you, it might just have woken them up to the true nature of the media. And they couldn't have that. So they did report on it. But of course they portrayed those taking part as dangerous anarchists and rebels and rioters and fundamentalists, radicals, And then of course in Vienna, Austria, things have really been bubbling to the surface in Austria this last week, where initially the UnVied were told that they were going to get plunged into lockdown, but the Vied would still be able to participate in society and go in cafes and restaurants and such. How they ever hoped to police that remains an enigma. How would you ever actually put something like that into reality? But nevertheless, it didn't come to that because there was then a complete about turn by the Austrian government. What a bloody surprise. And they announced that the entire nation was going to get put into lockdown again. And this sparked a huge reaction of resistance from Austrian people. I've yet to watch many of the videos and catch up with a lot of the accounts, but from what I gather, there was a huge demonstration on the streets in Vienna, and many of the police and the armed forces who would normally be relied upon to enforce the draconianism actually stood with the people. They chose their side. And it's about bloody time that we saw this dynamic happen. I was at many protest events last year where the speakers and the crowd were bellowing at the police that were standing on the sidelines, waiting for the order to wade in and unleash the violence. They were saying to them, choose your side. Because history is being made. And it will be remembered, the part that everyone played in this, when this shit is all over. Names will be remembered. Choose your side and choose it wisely. I don't often quote George W. Bush Jr., the village idiot, but in the wake of 9/11, he came out and said, you're either with us or with the terrorists. So it was a choice of two. And that's what we've got here. You're either with us, the people, or you're with the sick, psychopathic evildoers who are going down. And what I've seen this weekend has filled me full of hope and full of optimism. And I think we might be close to that tipping point that so many of us have been looking for so long. Now, I've called it the beginning of the end because I don't want anyone to get complacent and think, great, the process is underway, it's all going to happen organically, naturally, I can just sit back and wait for my freedom to be returned. No, we all have to continue to participate and play our part. And we'll all know what our role is in this. It will be different for each person, but it will be clear what it is. We need to remember that things could and probably will get rougher and more difficult and darker before they get better, unfortunately. But the end point is actually in sight. The light at the end of the tunnel. It might just be a pinprick of light at the moment, but it's there. And that's what we continue to work towards. We must never forget that we're in a war. It's largely an information war. It's a war, the nature of which has never been fought before, because it's not involved tanks and guns and missiles and bullets and bombs. It's involved getting information out there, getting truth out there, combating propaganda, lies, brainwashing, bad science, all of this. Bravery is called for, courage is called for, tenacity is called for, common sense is called for in this war. And we need as many of us on the front line of the battlefield as possible. You can't take off that armour just yet. We're going in. We are going to win this because we have to win this, because the alternative is just not acceptable. And think of the number of people now that are on board, on the side of truth, light, goodness, God. It's got to be in the millions. It clearly is in the millions worldwide. Did these millions of people, including me and so many of those that will be watching this, did we, on a spirit level, in the spirit realm, before we got here, choose to incarnate into these bodies that we have, into these lives that we have, at this point in the timeline, to lose, to be enslaved, to get thrown into prison camps? I'm damn sure I didn't, and I'm sure that will go for everyone watching this. We didn't come here to lose. We came here to be a part of the generation that will finally turn this madness, this injustice, this horror that humanity has been living through for countless generations, to turn this around and finally win things back for ourselves. That's an incredible privilege when you think about it. Of all the points in the timeline that we could have been born into, we're born at a point where we have the opportunity to participate in that process. No one of us can do it by ourselves, but collectively we can become such a powerhouse of strength and determination that the sickos tiny in number compared to us, stand no chance, and their demise, at last, is inevitable. So, we can get down, we can get depressed, we can feel the pressure of everything that's going on. I know that. But we have to bear in mind that it's not the case that we're the generation that came here to suffer under this, unlike others. It's the point that we're the generation that is going to end this, the beginning of the end. And it's begun. We've seen the signs this weekend. More people than ever getting out on the streets. And it's interesting to me that a lot of this activity has happened at the time of a full moon. At least where I am, it's been a full moon for about the last 4 or 5 nights. I have to wonder whether that's had an effect on human activity over this time. Whatever the moon is, it's a luminary, it's a disc of light. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a lump of rock that you can land a rocket on, that's for damn sure. So maybe the timing has to be right for these things to happen. The circumstances have to be right. Maybe we're just about to enter into that time. It's our time now. There is no going back now. The process that's been started is irreversible. The only way is forward to our victory. And we may lose a few along the way. That's the case with wars. And I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared for whatever this takes. I've never before in my life been prepared to lose my life for a cause that I believed in. But I am now, if that's what it ever came to. And I don't fear that, because freedom is inherent to life. You cannot have life without freedom. And if freedom isn't worth fighting for and dying for, if that's what it comes to, for the sake of others, well then you're not really living. And it's the same as living your life in fear. All these people we see scurrying around in masks, looking nervous, doing tests every 5 minutes, terrified that they might have got you know what. All because the idiot lantern in the corner of the room has got them scared shitless through its incessant propaganda. If that's the way you're so-called living your life, well then you're already dead. Because that's no way to live. The process is irreversible. The psychopaths must know this. Do they really think the millions of people that have woken up to truth, they might not be as far advanced as many of us are, but there'll be lots of people that have twigged, finally, a bit slow on the uptake, but they got there in the end, that something isn't quite right about this V narrative. Maybe they've taken 2 of the arm spears and they were promised they'd get their freedom back and they'd get more perks in society than those that didn't. And now they're being told they've got to take their booster. And they're thinking, well, hang on a minute. We were told that all we had to do is get double arm speared and we get our freedoms back. Welcome to reality, folks. Welcome to the way these sickos work. They're liars. They're frauds. They're criminals. They're thieves. They're murderers. They're Satanists. They're paedophiles. In case you didn't know. So many of these people now on board, feeling that they've been duped, feeling that they've been lied to, wanting to discover the truth of the matter and wanting some justice for what's been done to them. All the people whose relatives, family members, loved ones have either died or been seriously maimed after taking an arm spear. How many of them must there be around the world? What do the psychopaths think these people are going to do? Just go back to sleep? Just go back to believing all the lies of the mainstream media? just go back to being an obedient, meek, compliant member of organised society? It's not going to happen. What do the psychopaths think is going to be the case with all these whistleblowers, all these insiders, these doctors, medical professionals, big pharma executives who are finally coming forward and spilling the beans on what this agenda is, or different aspects of it, or the funeral directors as well? All these different people exposing the fraud. Where do they think they're going to go? Do they think they're just going to shut up and go back into the shadows? They have unleashed something which cannot be stopped, and which is going to lead to their demise. And they did it. They forced it into place by being so arrogant and so audacious and unloading their entire arsenal of tyranny on us all at once. If they'd stuck to their usual method of drip feeding it in, little by little, bit by bit, step by step, over many years or decades, they might have got away with this because people wouldn't notice. It's the frog in the pot syndrome. But for whatever reason, either through absolute arrogance, thinking we can do whatever we want, or through sheer desperation and panic, thinking, shit, we don't have 10 or 20 years to get this done. People are waking up to truth too quickly. We've got to do this all at once in the next couple of years. Whatever the case, they have unleashed and set into motion a process which cannot be stopped. It's only going to go in one direction, and it's only going to lead to one result, however long it takes and whatever it looks like along the way. It's the beginning of the end for the sick, demon, freak, ghoul abominations of creation. Bring it on. I saw some footage of the overpaid, overfed, overprivileged, bloated old Etonian Johnson in the House of Commons this week. And it was picked up on by the mainstream media that he sounded very croaky and very hoarse. He had a raspy voice. And I see this as symbolic of the control system having caught a cold. It's got a sore throat. And when you get a sore throat, often you're just a couple of steps away from getting a full-blown cold or the flu. So it's symbolic because Johnson's there croaking away and he didn't look well, which is great. And it's symbolic of the control system getting a sore throat, having a raspy voice, because they're very, very close to succumbing fully to one of these conditions. If the firewall of the mainstream media wasn't there, this whole thing would collapse in a heartbeat. It's only their propaganda and their fear-mongering that has kept this going. The control system is hanging by a thread, and the mainstream media is that thread. If and when that ever goes, if that's possible, we have to believe it's possible, there goes the agenda. Without the firewall, there is no tyranny. I'm going to put a link in the show notes below to a great album that was sent to me by a group called Apostles of Liberty. I get sent a lot of music and a lot of truth music, and I listen to it all. It varies in quality. Some of it's amazing, fantastic. Some of it's not so great. And it's very rare that I get an album where you can listen to the whole thing without wanting to skip a track. You just do not feel the instinct to hit the forward button because it's got you, it's captivating. Every track is a winner. There are a few albums like that in the mainstream that I've enjoyed over the years, but when it comes to truth music, this one really stands out because it's one that you want to listen to in one sitting all the way through. So there's a link to where you can buy it in the show notes below. They got a couple of tracks on YouTube if you want to get a taster there. One of them is called A Future for Our Children, and it really is an anthem for these times. the chorus line goes, "Me and you, we pledge an oath. We will not forfeit our freedom. We'll sacrifice all we have for a future for our children." So big shout to the Apostles of Liberty, putting in some great music there. A few other announcements. So the Musical Truth 3 speaking tour is underway. Now, I did my first date in Newcastle at the weekend. On my main website, djmarkdevlin.com, if you go to the events section there, you'll get details of all the upcoming talks that I'll be doing. There's a fair few in the coming weeks. The next one is this coming Saturday in Wellingborough, where they're building, reportedly, one of these big gulag-style prison camps, complete with its own crematorium. What could that possibly be for? It won't get used. So Wellingborough, it's for the old grammarians, and it's put together by Jags. Big shout to Jags. It's a daytime event. It kicks off around about 11 a.m, goes through till 2 p.m, and I'll be delivering excerpts from Musical Truth 3 soundbites. So anyone that can get to Wellingborough this coming Saturday daytime, 27th of November, I'll see you there. I'm going to be doing 2 dates for Truth Juice in Birmingham in the coming weeks. The first one is Tuesday the 7th of December, and there I'll be delivering the talk that I did in Newcastle on Friday, and it's called The Dark Heart of the BBC. So that's in the evening of Tuesday 7th of December at the E57 Social Club, Kings Heath, Birmingham, for Truth Juice. I'll then be back there on the 4th of January doing my Musical Truth 3 Soundbites tour. And all the other dates, including the upcoming Bases Conference in Wiltshire and the Questioning History Conference in East Sussex, are detailed on my site. On the subject of truth music, I want to mention that the Sound of Freedom Show 108 is now live. It's on Mixcloud. You can also download it from Mediafire. The link is in the Mixcloud show notes. So it's been a while since I've been able to put together one of these episodes, but the Sound of Freedom 108 is now available. And that's truth music. It's meaningful, empowering lyrics. It's good vibrations, good frequencies, music to truly uplift the spirit, especially the soulful house stuff in the last hour. So this whole show is just short of 2 hours, and it features a couple of tracks from the Apostles of Liberty, who I just mentioned, plus a couple of their poems. So check that out, all fans of the Sound of Freedom, or if you've never heard it before, give it a go. This is music which, if it was played on the radio 24/7, instead of the satanic garbage that they churn out, it could change the world overnight. Big thanks to everyone who took part in the 11/11 meditation just recently. I've been seeing a lot recently. The power of manifestation in action. This dynamic of expressing your will and your intent and stating it to creation, to the universe, putting it out there, and imagining a scenario where what you want is already done. It's already come into play. It's a real thing. I saw a couple of examples of this at the weekend in Newcastle. I was there with my friends Maureen and Dawn, and I was getting many stories of how they've manifested situations that they wanted themselves simply by applying their will to it, truly believing it, and imagining it already granted, already done. And they did one in my presence on Saturday. There was a certain individual who they wanted to appear and to interact with them. And they put it out there that this was their wish. And about half an hour later, this individual messaged me and we arranged a meeting. That's manifestation in action. So they've mastered this. And it's a dynamic that's available to any of us if we can just learn to harness those powers. So manifestation really works. Best believe our opponents, the evildoers, have been doing this forever because they know how it works and they employ it. We've got to be doing the same. We've got the numbers. Just imagine. Billions of us all expressing our will for the same outcome. And, you don't wish for the evildoers to end up on a gallows. You don't want anything negative like that. The universe responds to wishes that are in line with goodness and light and positivity. So we want to be expressing our will to manifest a situation where, as I've said many times before, truth, freedom, justice, and love are the default emotional states. And within that type of scenario, evil cannot flourish, and lies and deceptions stand fully exposed. Manifestation is real, folks. I need to master this skill more for myself, and so many more of us need to be doing it. It's the beginning of the end. There is no turning back now. We're making history. Everyone's participation will be remembered. Did you stand for truth and freedom and justice and love, or did you side with the enemy? Everyone's names will be remembered as we continue to write history.